Hi guys, I'm back at it once again for a brand new video for you, and welcome to a much requested MotoGP 2015 season review. Couple of things I've got to apologise for before we get going. Number one, I've got a cold, so I don't sound that great at the moment. Hopefully it doesn't affect me too much, despite the 17 pounds of phlegm in the back of my neck at the moment. I know it's a delightful visual image you now have in your heads. But at the same time, I've also got this guy with me.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm here to ruin your videos, but probably not unpopular request just got me back here again to review some season.
Yes, because he was crying yesterday about not being involved in my videos enough, so now he's here for another round. So he's here. Yeah, unfortunately, I felt like this would actually be a better video if Ryan was involved too.
I don't know why.
Me neither. You guys asked for this. You're a bunch of fucking masochists. Right. So, starting this off, 2014 ended with Marc Marquez breaking records. He won 13 Grand Prix last season. Won the title, I think it was something like 80 points over Valentino Rossi. In the end, he finished in second. There was a lot of testing that went down. Marquez looked godly in testing, even though there was much talk that he was actually reviewing 3 different chassis. We didn't think anything of it at the time, but hindsight being 2020, we didn't realise just how bad Honda's problems were for a good few rounds yet. But yeah, we went to Qatar to start the season, and if there's one thing that caught a lot of people out, it was just how good that new Ducati GP15 was at the start of the season. Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the case of that Ducati have been struggling for years now, and no one really saw something like this actually coming. And they had a hot, exciting prospect with Ione coming into the seat, and now it's like the Italian dream team effectively. And yeah, it was very exciting to see that happen.
The Italian dream team that Valentino Rossi tried and failed. But yeah, it was a interesting situation, all right. And I think it was a totally redone bike. The GP14 was never a particularly fast bike. It was often far, far behind the factory Yamahas and Hondas. But the GP15, combined with the concessions, I'm pretty sure Dovizioso was on pole, wasn't he?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I'm 95% sure he was on pole. I'm pretty sure he was, given that the Ducati was on soft tyres, and it was actually a really unpredictable quality session with Espargaro looking very fast but crashing it, and then Marquez was out qualified by Pedrosa on the front row as well. I remember that one too. But during the race itself, Marquez got bumped off at turn 1, so he was in last by the time turn 2 rolled around. I think it was Lorenzo that gave him a little tag, because Lorenzo gets away with that more than any other rider in the field. He just does. Like, he always has his little nudges coming through corners on opening laps, and he always, like, it happened last year at Le Mans too, but you know, Lorenzo got away with that one too, because it's lap 1, and you just get away with things like that.
I should have taken notes.
He's not bitter at all, being a Rossi fan. But the Marquez was dropped down to last off the opening lap. I remember Bautista was very unhappy with him because he cut his nose off in the middle of one of the hairpins to pass him. But Marquez furiously ran through the field to eventually finish in 5th. He just didn't have the pace to keep up with the leading 4 in the end. The leading 4 of the 2 Yamahas of Rossi and Lorenzo, and the 2 Ducatis of Dovizioso and Iannone. And it was the same old story with Ducati. It was a very, very fast bike in a straight line, but not quite enough in the corners to keep up. At least that's the I noticed anyway. And Lorenzo had a problem, Ryan. His helmet had actually malfunctioned in the second half of the race. Like his top visor had actually, I think it was the padding inside the top of his helmet had actually dropped.
Yeah, it basically covered one eye completely. So it was riding at 200 miles an hour with one eye, effectively.
And he kept going because he's an idiot. Like, how is that a good idea?
Safety first.
Safety first, everybody. Like, if race direction knew about it, he'd have been black flagged for sure.
It's kind of funny how he's the biggest pioneer for safety in MotoGP, but yet he still does that.
Rides with one eye. Like, how is this a good idea? So he eased off and eventually finished in 4th. But up the front, it was Valentino Rossi that narrowly picked Andrea Dovizioso to the post to take another win. Yay, Valentino Rossi wins. He was still in that veteran. It was still in what I like to call nice veteran of the occasional win mode.
Woo!
with Dovizioso in second, and Iannoni's his first career podium in third. So yeah, it was a brilliant race in that second round. Opening round of the season, it was an absolutely fantastic race. Another one of those classics. So you never really knew who was going to win until right at the end, and Lorenzo was actually in control of that race for a good chunk of it until the helmet malfunction happened, and Valentino Rossi would end up coming through to take the first win as Ryan furiously scrolls on the MotoGP website. What are you looking for?
No, I thought we were going to be talking about Moto2 next, right?
It's just MotoGP.
Yeah, just MotoGP, alright.
If we did 2 and 3, we'd be here for another hour.
It was weird because you had the Moto2 table put up here.
That's the website, not me. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that on purpose, bro. Relax.
I'm sorry.
COTA. Now, COTA was actually dominated more for qualifying when it comes to newsworthy stories, as Marc Marquez set what I like to call the lap of the gods. His main bike had conked out for some technical reason on the home straight. He had about 3 minutes left in qualifying. He had to hop over the barrier, run like a madman through the pit lane, get on the spare bike that was already warmed up and ready for him. He had to go in there with like 2 minutes and 20 seconds left, so he had time for one qualifying lap and one attempt at pole, and he rides it like a man possessed. You could see him almost crash it on 2 occasions at full speed, trying to set a ridiculous qualifying lap. And what does he do? He goes out there and he puts it on pole. In ridiculous fashion, he by a third of a second over Andrea Dovizioso on his spare bike, with no time left on the clock, having ran through the pit lane 50 seconds prior. It was a truly ridiculous lap. We all know this wasn't Marquez's year, but he still has this tendency of just putting out some ridiculous moments every once in a while, and this was just another one of those moments more than anything else, wasn't it?
Yep, pretty much.
Highly in-depth commentary there from Ryan. Now, after the initial moment of a puddle, it's delayed the race by 15 minutes because for some reason COTA sprang a leak somewhere. Maybe they were saving something for the Grand Prix in November. But before that moment, Marquez once again wins in America. I think that's now something like his 7th win actually in America. He's never lost a Grand Prix in MotoGP when it's been staged in America. And he won the American Grand Prix at COTA by 2.3 seconds over Dovizioso, who got his revenge on Valentino Rossi to finish second ahead of Rossi in third. Lorenzo in fourth, who turns out was actually suffering a bout of bronchitis at the time. Lorenzo did not have a very good start to the year. A helmet malfunction and then bronchitis. I mean, what more can you say? That's just some nasty shit right there. Iannoni in fifth, Bradley Smith in sixth was top Brit and top satellite runner, ahead of Crutchlow and Espargaro. So, moving on to Argentina. Argentina was epic. You know, we had another Marquez on poleman by half a second because Marc Marquez is a demon round Argentina. But it was a very intriguing race in the sense of strategy, because Honda made a last-minute call to put Marquez on the softer of the 2 factory compound tyres, basically.
The logic was basically new track, fresher surface, it might last longer, it might go in duration. But the heat of the surface itself was the big kicker in this.
Yeah.
Because that's what threw everyone off guard. It was like, alright, then do we roll for the softer compound and hope that the fresh surface will not degradate the tyres enough, or do we be conservative and go on the hard compound and hope and pray that the track is hot enough so that it leads to the hard compound going the duration, and people that go on the softs get caught out.
Basically, at this point, we all know as well that Pedrosa was going through an unpump as well, so he wasn't around for the next 3 rounds. So Hiroshi Oyama was filling in for him. And it was kind of funny as well how Casey Stoner will actually offer to fill in, but Honda were like, no, we don't want to show you up, basically. Which is like the stupidest reason not to bring Casey Stoner back I've ever heard in my life.
You've got an excuse to bring in one of the greatest riders of all time, and you say no? Why?
No, we'll give Jonathan Ray a call instead and put Hiroshi Oyama on the bike. No disrespect to Jonathan Ray, obviously he's been fucking fantastic in World Superbikes this season, and there's no argument about that, but at the same time, like, why? When Casey actually offered to fill in. But yeah, Rossi and the rest of the guys put the extra hard tyres on, the yellow mark tyres, while Marquez put on the the softer red marked hard compound tyres. And Marquez had this amazing start. He was like 4 or 5 seconds clear by the end of like half distance, but slowly but surely Rossi started reading him in the second half of the Grand Prix. He cleared the second pack of Dovizioso, Crutchlow, Iannone and Lorenzo, and he'd actually gone off now and started going after Marquez. And with 2 laps to go, Rossi gets up to the back of Marquez. Rossi passes him in the bottom hairpin down the lengthy back straight. Marquez tries to come back at him, and they collide, and Marquez goes down. And cue your narratives, because we just had a Rossi and Marquez collision. Not for the first time you'll hear about this season. Rossi banged into Marquez. Marquez goes down. Marquez scores a donut. Rossi goes on to win by 5.6 seconds with Dovi in second. Dovi with 3 consecutive second places to start the season. Poor Ducati. Never quite there for the win. But, you know, still good points. Because at this point, Rossi was world champion leader by just 1 point over Dovi. Dovi had 60 points at this point. Rossi had 61. But, Marquez had gone down. Controversy. Me personally, racing incident. I mean, I could see why Marquez was desperate to come back. He wasn't losing as much time in the second half. Like, he was losing all of his time in sector 1, if I remember correctly, because it was the slower, more technical section.
Yes, it was a session that was more effective on the tyres itself.
It wasn't so bad in sectors 2, 3, and 4. It was sector 1 where Marquez was losing all the time, and yeah, I could see why Marquez would come back, because that's what Marquez does. Like, why is this a new thing to you people? Like, a lot of people were saying, oh, you know, Marquez tried to take Rossi out, and I'm like, no. Like, this is just, like, Marquez doesn't discriminate. Okay? Like, people wanted to bury him last year after, like, that really controversial move at Village at Silverstone against Lorenzo, when Lorenzo said, oh, my bike just can't do that. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But, yeah, Rossi winning in Argentina. So much controversy over Dovizioso and Crutchlow. Marquez is already quite a way away off the championship now. And yeah, both Hondas failed to finish because Ayama dropped the following lap too. So the highest finishing Honda was Cal Crutchlow in third, who'd actually got his one and only podium for the year after passing Iannone on the final corner. What a baller. But that was good Cal, everybody. That was good Cal. But now we get to what we like to call the Lorenzo section. You know, Lorenzo's lair, the flag in the dirt, that kind of thing, basically, because Lorenzo would go on to win the next 4 races in dominant fashion. It all started out in Jerez, and like Jerez, Lorenzo just looked untouchable. Nobody was near him. In qualifying, all the race, he won by 5.5 seconds. Marquez had an injured thumb, I think it was, from some kind of dirt biking accident the week before. Rossi, I think, was a little bit hurt because he had a crash somewhere along the line as well. He was a little bit dinged up. So I don't think anybody was really going to challenge him. So yeah, the top 3 were separated by 11.5 seconds. It's quite rare that a MotoGP race has a top 3 that's that spread out.
Well, top 4 really. You got Hiroshi was 20 seconds behind the leader as well.
26 seconds covered the top 5. It was like watching an F1 race. Lorenzo was untouchable. Nobody was beating him that day. And it's funny because at that point we actually had 5 different riders on the podium so far this season, and Lorenzo was not one of them. Very weird indeed. But, you know, was he so often praised Lorenzo for his consistency, but at the same time, that's just one of those things. You know, it just happened that way, where Lorenzo was just untouchable on the day. Marquez in second, Rossi in third, so Rossi still led the championship. Dovizioso I think he crashed, but he came back up to finish in 9th, while Iannone accidentally put the bike in wet setting as opposed to launch control. Whoops. He finished in 6th in the end. He actually got a quite solid recovery from him after a dodgy start, to say the least.
And the only race that Horsebacker was able to beat Smith on.
I think he beat him at the end of Valencia, I think, as well, didn't he?
I'm not sure. We'll find out later. But, yeah, Le Mans was next. Kind of more of the same, really. Lorenzo took the whole shot, went off and took an easy win over Rossi in second. Dovi in third. Marquez was 20 seconds off the win in fourth. We got into quite a dogfight with Andrea Iannone over the course of the race as well. But the funny thing was, I think this was the first race we really worked out that Honda have got a serious technical problem. And it turns out that Honda had built an engine that was way too aggressive on its riders. It was an engine that you couldn't ride like a conventional Honda.
it was a situation when the 2015 chassis and the combination of that and the engine being too aggressive meant that Marquez couldn't ride how he would normally ride. It took away his strongest asset, which was probably his engine braking, and it took it away. So we kind of worked out by that point that the Honda was actually on paper just a far worse bike than the Yamaha was across the board. Only in a couple of circuits was the Honda actually competitive around more than anything else. And yeah, it was quite exposed that Honda had a serious issue with its bike. And Marquez had actually gone back to the 2014 chassis of last year to try and counteract some of the problems, with varying degrees of success. We'll get to that later. But again, Bradley had a front row seat to the best seat in town as Marquez and Iannone went to war for 4th place. Iannone himself, I think he had a dislocated shoulder and a cracked leg going into that race. So Iannone was basically riding crippled. But still would go on to finish in the top 5. What a boss. He's a madman. But yeah, Lorenzo taking a second win. Mugello, again, kind of more of the same, really. Lorenzo was off like a shot and won. Marquez crashed after pushing too hard at Mugello, basically. And Iannone finished in second, a career-high finish from him. Valentino Rossi in third, so of course the Italian fans were all happy about that, with Rossi on the podium. And yeah, basically the mecca of Rossi support, basically. Guys with chainsaws and customized 46 guitars, because the Italians are fucking mad, basically. With Danny Pedrosa in 4th, Bradley Smith in 5th, beating Pol Espargaro over the line. Funny thing about that was that Pol Espargaro actually had factory support at this point. He had the factory chassis, and he was still finishing behind Bradley Smith, which I find just hilarious in its own right. With Maverick Vinales in 7th place for Suzuki as well. A great result for Maverick too in that one. And shout out to the policeman, Michele Pirro, in 8th place as well.
Miss you, man.
Filling in those testing sessions whenever he can. Michele Pirro is the man. The policeman up there in 6th. Actually, 8th place, I should say 8th place. And to everybody's surprise, next time out in Catalonia, a Suzuki on pole! Suzuki 1 and 2, Alicia Spargaro and Maverick Vinales. On the front row, there was grown men crying in the Suzuki paddock. They had waited so long for this moment.
This couldn't possibly go wrong, right? Right?
I don't think Suzuki even gave a shit at this point.
Right?
Suzuki just didn't care. They were like, sod it, we're on pole. Break out the bubbly. We got this.
This might not never happen ever again.
Yeah, the concessions and Espargaro pulling out a belter of a lap put him on pole position, with Maverick Vinales in 2nd place. But their bike having a serious acceleration problem and no seamless downshift meant that they got swallowed up into turn 1, and they were never seen again, unfortunately, as Jorge Lorenzo took another whole shot and would go on to win ahead of Valentino Rossi by just under a second. The main story of the race was Marquez tried a brave lunge at the early part of the race, got it completely wrong, ended up in the gravel, effectively ending Marquez's title campaign before it had even gotten started, really. Karma for what exactly?
For being a dick to my boy Rossi.
Sorry that happened, viewers. But yeah, Marquez had got it way too wrong. Blatantly an unforced error. Off the track, down, gone. It was a war of attrition. There was a lot of riders that didn't make the end. Hernandez, Crutchlow, Marquez, Pol Espargaro, Dovizioso, Melandri, Hayden, and Espargaro. Alicia Espargaro, I should say, who was in 4th place at the time. With 5 laps from the end, he crashed out. So it was a war of attrition. There was only 16 finishers. It was like watching a 2010 race, so to speak. As Lorenzo took the win over Rossi in 2nd. Rossi tried to get closer, but wasn't close enough to ever think about considering to make a move. Those two were 20 seconds ahead of Pedrosa in 3rd, Iannone 4th, Bradley Smith in 5th, Maverick in 6th, a great result for him, beating Scott Redding in 7th place, and Bradle for the forward team in 8th place, ahead of Petrucci and Bautista, getting Aprilia's first points of the year in 10th. Aprilia in the top 10. Well done, Alvaro. Attaboy, after that terrible 2014 season you had. But yeah, we went to Assen next, and the streak was over. Lorenzo looked fuming. He was way down the order as Rossi and Marquez went to war again. Another great scrap back and forth. Those two were the fastest guys on track by miles on the day. But it turns out it was Marquez that tried the infamous last corner Assen lunge At the chicane, which Valentino Rossi was forced, I still say he was forced, to go across the gravel to cut the last corner to win the Grand Prix.
Narrative.
More
narrative.
Rossi Marquez 2. Marquez looking for revenge for Argentina. Or something.
Lunges.
Lunges.
All the lunges.
As Rossi would go on to win the race. Marquez would appeal the decision. It was thrown out. Rossi had his second win of the year. A very, very well-earned performance. Marquez in second. Lorenzo way down the order in third. It's just very odd that Lorenzo was like half a second slower than everybody, than his own teammate was. Like, Aston, he'd already stuck it on pole, Rossi, which was a shock to everybody. Like, oh my god, Rossi's on pole!
Pole lap? The hell?
Because people don't know, Rossi has been a shit qualifier for about 5 years now. So I think he's had 2 pole positions in the last 5 years. So for this to be a thing and Rossi to stick it on pole was a shock to everybody. It's like, because people had quite clearly worked out that because of Lorenzo being on the front row half the time and then getting the best start and then leading into turn 1 and whatnot, if that was ever going to happen, then Rossi would have to improve his qualifying to get up there and be competitive, and that just wasn't happening. So, so that was the thing. Moving on to the Saxon ring real quick.
Honda Land.
It
makes no sense, but it just works.
It just worked that way because for some reason, I think the stat is something along the lines of Honda have won every Grand Prix at the Saxon ring since 2010. So Marquez took a very comfortable win ahead of Pedrosa in second. Valentino Rossi didn't take any risks with Pedrosa and took a very easy third ahead of his main title rival Lorenzo in fourth. Note, this was the only time this season that both Hondas finished a race ahead of Lorenzo, which is quite crazy in its own right. Iannone was 20 seconds back in fifth, ahead of Bradley Smith, Crutchlow, and then Pol Espargaro in eighth place. The World Championship, as it stood going into the summer break, Valentino Rossi had a 13-point lead over Jorge Lorenzo at 166 compared to Rossi's 179. Iannone was in third with 118 ahead of Marquez on 114. So Marquez was already 65 points off of Rossi for the title race already, given all the errors that Marquez had made this season. But hey, Marquez is terrible, guys, because he didn't win on the best bike this time. He's awful. Overrated. It was a fluke last year or something like that. Summer break, much complaining was done. Many more panic rumors were flying around, and we came back and Marquez reminded everybody that he's still Marquez in America. He can't beat Marquez in America. He is Captain America, and he took a very tense and dramatic win over Jorge Lorenzo in second. It was a dogfight between the two of them. They were scrapping each other. They were scrapping all race long. Marquez was waiting to pounce, and then Lorenzo just didn't have an answer for him once it did actually happen. Ryan's boy Valentino was in third there. He and Pedrosa had a great scrap in the middle of the field. Rossi must have been pissed at a title rival. That it wasn't a title rival, was messing with him. As Pedrosa and Rossi had a great scrap as well, but Rossi just about came out on top over Pedrosa in that one. Iannone again in fifth place, just narrowly beating Bradley Smith, who at this point was having one fantastic bloody season there, just was in the top 6 or 7 almost every Grand Prix. Ahead of Pol Espargaro, Carl Crutchlow in 8th, Dovi in 9th, Petrucci rounding off the top 10. A lot of guys out there struggling at the moment, but everybody was on the same race, and that was also nice to see. Nobody got lapped! Yay! Even Tony Elias wasn't lapped. What a guy. Because Elias was filling in for Karen Abraham on that Cardion bike that it looks like won't be here next year. It looks like Abraham might be going to World Superbikes instead.
Should have manly sit first.
So somebody's got to, right? Bruno next up, and yeah, vintage Lorenzo really smashed the lap record in qualifying. We're going to take a very easy win over Marquez in second, Rossi in third, nobody home. Iannone in fourth, beating Pedrosa, who seemed to be struggling with that arm pump more than anything else, and Dovi just behind him, literally 700s behind him in sixth. Those two had a great fight in the second half of the race. That was pretty much the highlight of the Grand Prix, really, with Bradley in seventh. Not much to really talk about from Bruno, really, and that was the race that Lorenzo led the World Championship for the first time in 2.5 years. It's crazy how you think about a rider like Lorenzo and how he's that's actually been over 2 years since he last led the World Championship. Crazy stat, that one. Silverstone was next, and it was raining! Yay! Yeah, people thought that might be the only way Rossi would be competitive. You know, Rossi's got a huge British following. And, yeah, of course, it rained. And, of course, Rossi would go on to take the win. Marquez was in second, but binned it at turn 1 afterwards. And he had no competition after that. But in second place, it was, of all people, Danilo Petrucci.
Italian Renaissance.
The Renaissance. It was an all-Italian podium. Like, we hadn't had an all-Italian podium in 9 years before Qatar 2015 happened. I mean, you got another one here, but it was Petrucci on the Pramac GP 14.1 bike, like the bad GP Ducati bike from last year, which for some reason has a knack of just flourishing whenever it rains. I don't know how. I'm not a technical expert. It just happened.
You knew. That's why I chose the 14.1 to the 14.2.
He was forced on that bike. Hernandez was on the 14.2.
Yeah.
And he made a mockery of Hernandez all season long. It's why he's gone back to Avintia. But yeah, Petrucci in second. A real breath of fresh air on the podium. A brilliant performance from him. Dovizioso in third, ahead of Lorenzo in fourth, who complained because his visor had fogged up during the race. And he still has that helmet sponsor. Whoops. Also, one thing you got to point out about that race, it was hilarious when the rain came down that every rider went down the pit lane and nobody took their spot on the grid and they had to red flag the start. That was hilarious. That was absolutely hilarious in its own right. Shout out to Scott Reddin as well that finished in 6th on his home Grand Prix as well on the Mark VDS bike. I mean, people say that Honda wasn't that bad. Who on the Honda had a good year? No one! And this one you thought that was crazy, Misano came next. It was even more crazy. We had MotoGP's first ever 2-stop race because it rained for about 10 minutes and then it stopped again. So the people got on the wet bikes. We had Rossi charge through the field to take the lead early on, beating Lorenzo and Marquez. Rossi just seemed to have so much more confidence in the wet, but then it dried out again. And the front three were all very close to each other, but it was Marquez that pulled the pin first, went in to change back onto the dry bike, and it was Marquez that would go on to take the win because the dry bike was about 8 seconds a lap faster than the than the wet setups was at the time. Lorenzo came in the lap after Marquez, and then Rossi came in the lap after that because Rossi didn't want to take a gamble, even though the Yamaha pit crew was screaming on their boards,
Go pit.
"Go pit! Go pit!" But no, they didn't listen. No, Rossi didn't want to take that gamble. It's an understandable reason for not pitting, but maybe the guys on the paddock know a bit more than you do, Valentino. Just this once. But it was Marquez that took a very easy win in the end after that brilliant tactical switch, with Bradley Smith in second, because Bradley Smith had actually not stopped during the race. He actually knew that the rain was going to be for a very small amount of time, and he figured that he could ride through it, and if he could dry up, he'd come back through the end and save the maybe 30 or 40 seconds worth of pit stops that comes with pitting twice. And it turned out beautifully as Bradley Smith ended up finishing in second, ahead of Scott Reddin, who crashed and then came back to finish in third. He crashed on lap 6. He came back and got on the podium. I don't know how he did it. I still don't know how he did that, but it worked. Ahead of Loris Baz in 4th place for the forward Yamaha, the Yamaha team that was on the brink of collapse. Loris Baz, who was the first guy to change onto the dry bike again for the second stop, came through and finished in 4th. The best open class performance of the season. One of the best open class performances ever. Only Alicia Spagaro's Aragon performance of last year was ever a case of an open class bike in a higher finishing position. Valentino Rossi would go on to finish in 5th ahead of Danilo Petrucci in 6th. But Lorenzo crashed it on the first lap out on the dry bike again. A very, very nasty crash that cost him 10 points. And 11 points, I should say, actually, because Rossi finished in 5th. 11 points and a partially damaged hand. Didn't play into the factor or anything much, but it was still quite funny. We went to Aragon next, and Lorenzo won that one too. Again, didn't have the best qualifying session, but Marquez binned it again because he was pushing too hard on lap 2. At this point, the Marquez title push really was over at this point. Lorenzo took a comfortable win, but it was Pedrosa and Rossi that had a big scrap for second, and Pedrosa came out on top, which pissed off everybody that wasn't a Rossi fan in yellow. So,
for everybody.
Who is this peasant that got involved? How dare Pedrosa be competitive again? But Pedrosa ended up finishing in second, with Rossi in third. Iannone fourth ahead of Dovizioso, back in the top of the field again after a couple of scrappy moments. And look at Alicia Spagaro there in sixth place as well. Great result for the Suzuki team there as well. But Lorenzo was turning the screw in the championship again. It looked like Lorenzo was just the faster man until Motegi happened. Another very wet and foggy day, and Pedrosa had managed his tyres so much better than everybody else, to the point where Pedrosa took a very easy win in the end. He was 8.5 seconds back at one point, and he would end up winning the race by the exact same margin.
It's funny how Lorenzo went from being shy in the wet, from being overly confident in the wet, shredding his tyres, and then just being a sitting duck for the rest of the race effectively.
Yeah, Pedrosa taking a comfortable win. Lorenzo completely shredded his front tyre and fell back. You know, we thought we might finally get a Yamaha scrap for second place, but Lorenzo went wide, didn't come back, and that was the end of the matter as Valentino Rossi took second, Lorenzo third. Marquez just didn't have it on the day really in fourth place ahead of Dovizioso, Crutchlow, Bradley Smith, and then Katsuyuki Nakazuka. The wildcard entry on that beautiful throwback Yamaha livery as well, finishing in 8th place. A great result for him as well. Both wildcards in the points. Takumi Takahashi for the Honda wildcard, and again the gorgeous throwback Honda livery as well, in 12th place as well. So yeah, great to see the wildcards in there. Can we have them? Can we have those liveries permanently, please?
No, that's what's my movie still. God
damn it! I want those liveries more. More. Phillip Island was next, and Marquez. Wow, what a race this was, by the way. Like, Iannone headbutts a seagull. There was a four-way scrap for the win. Marquez was unbelievable. Lorenzo got caught by Iannone. He was riding like a man possessed on the day. Had that amazing double overtake at the hairpin. It was a magnificent pass from Iannone. He looked incredibly racy all race long. But it was Marquez who started the last lap a second down in third place. He passed Iannone into turns 1 and 2. Took half a second out of Lorenzo into the middle sector, and it was his way of basically saying, I'm going to try and win this race or crash trying. Basically. He got round the outside of Lorenzo, over the crest of the hill, came down, overtook him at the penultimate corner, and would take 5 precious points out of Lorenzo in the fight for the championship. It was a lap of the gods from Marquez that would win him that Grand Prix. It was absolutely unbelievable, and I still to this day don't know how he did that. He set the lap record on the fastest lap of the Grand Prix with tyres that were 25, 26 laps old. I don't get it, right? I just don't get it. He's just shaking his head back here because it was ridiculous. Lorenzo in second, Iannone third, beating Rossi over the line, which was a bit of a upset the apple cart moment. But Pedrosa was in 5th, just 6 seconds off the win in the end. With Maverick Vinales in 6th, one of the best rides of the season. Maverick there, just 6.8 seconds off the win in 6th place. A brilliant job from the Suzuki boys on that one. Then Sepang happened. Now, you all know what happened in this race. I'm not going to talk about it at length because we already have on this channel a lot, and I'm not going to go into it in massive details. You know what happened, we know what happened, and judge it how you want to judge it, is all I will say on that one. But lost in the shuffle was Pedrosa's fantastic ride to win the race. A shame that he got completely glossed over as well, because I think that was Pedrosa's 50th career win. 51 actually, it was 50 versus 50 was at Motegi. But yeah, it was Pedrosa's magnificent ride that won the race ahead of Lorenzo in second. Rossi had a very lonely ride back in third. Bradley Smith in 4th, great result from him as well. Crutchlow in 5th, Danilo in 6th. But yeah, we spoke about Sepang, we don't need to talk about that anymore. And you know what happened at Valencia too. Now, talking about Valencia, we haven't really talked about it on the channel very much. What did he make of the front three?
It's really hard to say because it's like.
Because Rossi, I think the thing was that Rossi planted a seed of doubt in a lot of fans' heads, and made the accusation that Marquez wasn't trying hard enough to pass him.
My question mark was this, right? I'm not gonna be one of those people that's like, oh, Marquez is terrible. Oh, he's doing it just to help Lorenzo. I'm not gonna do it like that. What I'm gonna say is
I'm just going to heavily imply it.
all I'm gonna say is that I find it very weird how he was so ultra aggressive when racing Rossi in Sepang, but when it came to Valencia, his home race, he was just very conservative. I understand the whole idea of I want to finish. I'm not holding that against him. It's just I find it really weird how he's flip flops.
It wasn't a flip flop. Valencia is a very hard track to pass around an equal machinery because people think, oh well, Rossi passed so many riders. Like he wasn't a bike that was a second or 2 seconds a lap faster than people. Of course, Rossi could pass where he couldn't normally pass, but people forget 5 of the last 9 races in Valencia have been won from lights to flag. That's just how it is. Valencia on an equal bike, it's hard to pass around here. Like, the straight isn't really long enough to get a slipstream to pass anybody, and it's a very one-line kind of track. So, if Marquez says he tried with 5 laps to go, I'm inclined to believe him, especially given that he talked in Phillip Island about how he was trying to cool the front tyre down. Like he did in Phillip Island. That's exactly what Pedrosa did, and that's what Pedrosa did in the race, and that's how he very nearly won the damn thing during Valencia. So I'm more inclined to believe Marquez because he's actually got some validation to what he was saying earlier in the season. That's just my opinion, at least. Pedrosa did come close to the win, and now people went into the argument that said that, oh well, Pedrosa, he came back and passed Pedrosa, didn't he? Our response was Pedrosa ran wide. Of course, he left the door wide open for him. Pedrosa made a mistake. People forget that. It's like people see what they want to see in these situations. There is no evidence to suggest that Marquez deliberately helped Lorenzo out. And if he wanted to help Lorenzo out, he wouldn't have raced him. He would not have ran him so close, and he would not have broken his old strategy of trying to cool his front tyre down to try and keep up with him. It's a situation where I think nobody would have complained about this if it wasn't for what Rossi said in Sepang. If it wasn't for that, I don't think anybody would have questioned this.
Pretty much.
I think because Rossi has now planted the seed of doubt in people's minds, people are now going to look at anything Marquez does with cynicism. And I think that's more the situation than anything else. And I'm very disappointed in Rossi's behaviour after the race, where he came for finishing 4th. He had a bitch fit. He said it wasn't a deserved championship for Lorenzo. Lorenzo can't be happy with this. Funny, because I think he was very happy after he celebrated. He didn't show up to the awards ceremony, which is quite embarrassing, as Lorenzo invited all his crew up there to celebrate with him, and Rossi was in his motorhome calling the boss, acting like somebody had robbed him of something, which I don't buy at all. But there you go. Jorge Lorenzo is now a 3-time MotoGP World Champion. He won 7 Grand Prix this season, including obviously the finale at Valencia in brilliant fashion. It was a brilliant defensive ride, really, under intense pressure from 2 very rampant Hondas that were much faster on the day than I thought they were going to be. So, yeah, on the whole, a very good season, I would say, Rob. One of the best seasons ever, in my opinion. We had 4 absolutely outstanding races. We had drama, we had storylines, we had narrative. I don't see how you can't like the season if you're not a bike fan, quite frankly,
I wasn't a big fan of the season, to be honest.
Why?
It's just a case that...
Rossi didn't win?
No, it's not one of those ones. So I think the reason I don't like the season as much as others is the case of that. There was a lot of dry spells, I like to say. There was a lot of moments where it's like, yes, this is a brilliant season, but you got areas like Argentina, you have races like
Qatar,
Misano. And it's like you had lines like that, but at the same time you had a lot of races like Jerez.
Isn't that kind of normal though?
Or Le Mans. Just like there was a lot of dry spells, I would say.
This season had 4 all-time great races in it. For me, I think for me it's my all-time favourite season in MotoGP because we had a title fight that went the distance. A story with Rossi going for his 10th world title. It might be his last ever chance of the world title given his age. Lorenzo was brilliant. Marquez was taken down a peg a little bit, but still had spectacular moments. We had some surprising upsurgence from guys like Pedrosa, Bradley Smith as well. I absolutely adored this season. I thought it was fantastic, and I can't wait for next year now. I think it's going to be fantastic with standardised ECUs and Michelin tyres. I think it's got potential to be a real classic. But yeah. Looking at the final leaderboard, Lorenzo was world champion with 330 points. Rossi had 325. Marquez in third with 242. Pedrosa with 206, ahead of Iannone with 188. A great season for Mignoni, by the way, there, as well as Bradley Smith, who became just the 4th rider ever in the sport's history to score points at every single Grand Prix across the season. 181 points, and Bradley 6th in the championship, just behind Iannone. A brilliant season from Bradley Smith, well deserved as well. Dovi in 7th, Crutchlow in 8th, Paul Espargaro 9th, ahead of Danilo Petrucci, got in the top 10 ahead of Alicia Espargaro there as well. Brilliant job from him. But guys, thank you very much for watching this very, very long video. It's already been 40 minutes long. If you want to follow Ryan on Twitter, I think it's Ryan_H46, something like that.
RJ_46.
There you go. If you want to annoy him on Twitter, feel free. I don't know why the hell you would ever follow him. He just posts sexual gifs all day. But if you want to follow him on Twitter, feel free. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know where I'm going to get all the gameplay for this shit. Personally, I'll have to figure something out. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys let me know your highlights of the season as well. And until next time, I've been Andre Harrison. He's been Ryan Harrison. And I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.